morning, everyone. Thanks to Reed Corporate for organising today's event. Don Heimer gives his apologies. He's our Managing Director who's intending to be here today for this presentation but had to attend an important government meeting back in Perth. So I'm his stand-in for the day. I've been involved in Caravel since about 2016, 2017 when we acquired First Quantum's interest in the company. And since that time, it's mainly been a resource development project. But last year we completed our PFS, and from then, under the guidance of Don, we've been really moving into a pre-development story. So today's presentation is focusing on where we're at in that story. We've got a short video which provides a nice sort of overview before I go into some of the details.
Copper, a cornerstone of progress for millennia, is now taking centre stage in decarbonising the world economy. Its exceptional conductivity powers groundbreaking technologies like electric vehicles and renewable energy. Australia, with the world's second largest copper reserves, is strategically positioned to meet escalating global demand as we transition to a low-carbon future. An impending supply shortfall calls for enduring projects. Caravel Minerals is leading the way, developing Australia's largest new copper deposit located in the wheat belt of Western Australia, just 150 kilometres northeast of the capital city, Perth. The world's fourth largest copper discovery of the last decade, the Caravel deposit has over 1 billion tonnes of mineral, containing 2.84 million tonnes of contained copper, with 1.4 million tonnes of copper in reserves, supporting a large-scale open-pit mining and processing operation spanning 25 years. The Caravel Copper Project will process 30 million tonnes of copper ore annually. Connected to the state electrical grid and leveraging modern mining technologies, this project aims to ensure minimal emissions and responsible environmental management, while delivering substantial financial returns over the life of mine. The Caravel team is working closely with local stakeholders and regulators to design a project which will deliver positive long-term outcomes for local communities, the broader Wheatbelt region, and shareholders. With these strong foundations, the Caravel Copper Project offers the scale, location, margins, and strategic timing to deliver exceptional long-term value, putting Caravel Minerals firmly on track towards becoming Australia's next major copper producer.
So there's four key themes around this project. If I can make it move on. So there's four key themes around this project that I want to concentrate on today to help you understand a bit about how we intend to move this project forward. The location is a critical element for a project like this, has a huge impact in how your cost structures work and the risk for the project. Scale is critical to driving down costs and creating margins. Even though it's a very low-grade ore body, we can create significant margins by keeping those costs low. And timing's always critical, and our timing going into what appears to be a very substantial shortfall in copper supply over the coming years, our timing looks to be very good. The location just north of Perth is almost unique for a large-scale project like this. There is a sort of a Goldilocks area. You don't want to be too close, but close enough. And I think we're in a really good location. A couple of hours north means that we can access workforce, drive in, drive out from the northern regions of Perth, and avoid the costs and complications of FIFO. We're close to very good infrastructure within the Swiss grid, so we can access low-cost power with very good renewable components from some of Australia's or some of the world's best renewable energy resources just north of Perth. And we're very close to all of the services and the capabilities that WA has, particularly around the major project development. And so all of the engineering, supply and support type facilities that we need for a project like this are a short drive away, which has a huge impact on maintaining your costs and risks in the development stage. WA is an excellent jurisdiction for political risk. It's a mining supportive state. The government's strongly supportive of mining and the people are strongly supportive. So we've got very low political risk and social risk. And we're located within agricultural land. So the land's all been cleared. You see a few pictures of that through this presentation. It means we've got very little environmental impact relative to being in a pristine area. And native title in the southwest of WA has been settled by the state through a state agreement, which gives us a very clear pathway through all of our permitting and tenure. Those types of things are all critical to the development of a major project. You need secure tenure and strong social support, and we see the problems of that elsewhere in the world when you don't have those things, and I think that's a key differential for this project. This is the only slide I'm allowed to show as a geologist. Most of this is more about developing projects. As a geologist, I think it's really interesting that this project has turned up in an area that nobody really considered to be prospective for these types of discoveries. Porphyry coppers are typically in North America, South America, along major mountain chains, and generally very much younger, which is why they're still up at 4,000 metres altitude. Caravel's a very old porphyry copper project, but we are very confident it's a porphyry, and this is an old mountain belt. And that line that you can see extending through there is where two plate boundaries used to join. And it's host to a range of world-class deposits. Greenbushes in the south, the world's largest lithium mine. The Boddington gold mine, which has many similarities to the Caravel ore body. It's Australia's largest gold producer and a very substantial copper producer. And more recently, the discovery of a world-class platinum and polymetallic ore body by Chalice in the Julimar, just to the south of us. So there's a very interesting story emerging in this province, and we're right at the forefront of understanding the copper potential in this area. Feel free to come and talk to me later if you have any other questions about geology, because the rest of this is about how we build the mine. So Caravel's the fourth largest discovery globally. I think there's a couple of other deposits that have just been announced recently, like Friedland's recently, I think this week, announced another major discovery in DRC. But if you look at those large deposits and where they are, they're in challenging locations. Central Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo, or South America in challenging places like Ecuador. So Caravel's the largest of the discoveries in the last decade that's in a first world country where you can comfortably spend the kind of money and develop a long-term mine plan like we intend to do. And these discoveries are getting much more difficult to find, particularly in good locations. If you look at those discoveries over the last decade and add them up, there's obviously a lot of smaller ones, but they're relatively insignificant. But the big ones all add up to about 60 million tonnes of copper discovered in the last decade. During that time, copper demand has grown from around 16 million tonnes to today's roughly 25 million tonnes. So over 200 million tonnes of copper was consumed in the time frame when only 60 million tonnes was discovered. And that's been the trend for the last couple of decades. And in the next decade, the world's forecast to consume 300 million tonnes of copper and likely to find even less. And that's what's driving this very positive outlook for copper prices. So we've announced just this week, we've made some upgrades to our resource. The total contained copper is now just over 3 million tonnes. So we're the largest undeveloped copper resource in Australia. And we've also added significant precious metal credits, which we hadn't calculated in the previous resource estimates. To put that in, for those not familiar with copper, 3 million tonnes of copper plus our byproduct credits, it's equivalent to about 15 million ounces of gold in terms of contained value. The byproducts that we've now added, we've calculated just under 900,000 ounces of contained gold, 46 million ounces of silver, and we previously announced that we have about 60,000 tonnes of moly. They'll contribute around 10 to 15% of total revenues to the project, so they're material byproducts. So the key to these types of projects, porphyries in general, but many comparable to iron ore mines, the key is scale. That drives down cost. And mining at large scale allows you to drive down your unit costs. That means you can drive down your cut-off grades, and then that means you can increase your ore body size, push out your mine life, and greatly reduce the risk in mining when you go to bulk mining instead of selective mining. So it's not something that we have many examples of in the metal space in Australia, but this is where most of the world's copper production comes from, these large-scale open-pit mines. About 60% of total world copper production comes from these types of porphyry coppers. So Caravel's ore bodies are very amenable to this, and that was a critical step in determining that this was a project that we thought we could take forward a number of years back. The high-grade components of this project, which could form the basis of a smaller tonnage high-grade operation, are all surrounded by low-grade ores. And by driving the project down this path of bulk mining, we can take everything, which means we're not selectively mining and we're producing a lot more copper instead of putting low-grade copper on the waste dump. So having an amenable ore body to this is the key. We can go into large mining fleet, and nowhere better to illustrate that than the Pilbara. And that large mining fleet gives us access to the latest technology for automation, electrification. And so that further drives down your costs. And we would have this mine's being planned as a fully autonomous mine from day one, which is probably, by the time we're in operation, there'll be half a dozen similar operating mostly in the Pilbara on exactly that same basis, using similar equipment. So there's a lot of expertise being developed around this in Western Australia. In the plant, being on grid power is a huge advantage. If we were a remote mine on diesel, it would be very hard to make this type of project work. But being on the grid saves us an enormous amount of money in generating our power, and it gives us access to the very large-scale renewable energy that's being developed within Western Australia. We've got some of the best wind and solar resources, only about 70, 80 kilometres to the west of the mine. Power is a huge input cost in these projects, and so not only are we happy to be able to access grid power at lower cost, but we're using very modern, high-efficiency technology, such as high-pressure grinding rolls. And these have been well established globally and proven in operations like Boddington and Cadia. In the future, these types of operations lend themselves to further refining technology, and we see big opportunities in areas such as ore sorting, bulk ore sorting, which are now in operation in some of the big porphyry copper, in some of the big copper operations around the world, and they have those types of technologies. I think are going to play an important part for us in the future. The location in WA gives us proximity to a lot of other important elements that are needed for designing, building, and operating a major mine. These capabilities, particularly in Western Australia, have been developed over the last 20 years through the development of the Pilbara, and we're able to tap into all of those opportunities that have come through that incredible development through the large-scale mining in the Pilbara. Project economics is shown here based on the 2022 PFS. We can generate a strong margin even at these low cut-off grades and low-grade ores. That lower right-hand circle illustrates the type of margin against a total value contained per tonne of ore. At today's prices, which are about the same as our forecast prices in our models, today's price is about $5.50 Australian. Our models are about $5.50 Australian, and today's price is about $5.70. The project has about a $2 billion NPV and generates very strong margins over its 25 to 30-year life. We've got some very good benchmarks in British Columbia, which we use to make sure that our costs are all making sense. We've studied those projects closely, and they give us a lot of confidence that we're on the right track. Our partners that we're working with, such as FL Smith and others we've announced recently, are the key to financing a large project like this, and we're expecting to progress this over the coming months. It's a key aspect of a junior company developing a major project, and we can see a pathway forward through that with the export credit agencies and some of the other key partners. And we can see that the equity markets can support major projects like this. We've seen that happening in the lithium space, in the gold space, projects like Albemarle and De Grey. And so in the copper market that we expect to see next year, we believe that these types of projects will be well supported. I've spoken briefly about the copper supply deficit. That's been covered very closely in the press, so I won't talk in detail about it. But it appears to be a very unavoidable thing due to the lack of new projects coming into the global market. Supply is very easy to forecast because the projects have such long lead time, and it's unavoidable that there's going to be a shortfall in new copper coming into the market. Beg your pardon, I was talking to that slide. So we're making good progress on all of our ESG permitting and tenure. We expect all of that to progress over the next 6 months, and we'll be coming into the latter part of next year to completion of the BFS. So this type of project is in the right location, and I think it's at a very good stage in the copper cycle for seeking the funding to develop a project like this. And we've got very good supporting partners in the state and all of the other groups that we're aligned with in Western Australia. So we're expecting to go through a very interesting stage over the next 12 months as we bring this to a development decision toward the end of next year, early 2025. Thank you very much.